Hello, hello, it's Marshall. Thank you very much for tuning in to the show. It is Saturday, April 25th, 2020, and we're all on lockdown, quarantine, and I hope you guys are all doing okay. In the meantime, though, I'm joined here today by a very special person. We've got Jamie Morden from GEOSynths.com. How you doing, Jamie?
I'm doing really, really well. Yeah, like yourself, in the lockdown, but as I mentioned, being in the studio, it's what we do. We're creatures of habit, aren't we? We lock ourselves in these rooms and play synthesizers and everything, so it's not really that much different, but yeah, I'm doing all right.
Excellent. Yeah, sometimes it does kind of feel like not a lot's changed for us studio dwellers, right? But
That's right. Yeah.
nonetheless, it's crazy times out there, so... thank you very much for joining me here for an interview. So I want to kind of touch base with you here because I know a lot of my viewers probably already know who you are, but some who may not. Do you want to give a little background on GeoSynths and what that is?
So yeah, GeoSynths is essentially, well, I came up with a YouTube channel shortly after YouTube started. So it was just me messing about and just doing stupid videos. All you saw were just my hands and things like that. And after doing it for a few years, I didn't really have a lot of people watching it. I decided to do some reviews of plugging synths into guitar effects pedals. And that's how I got the name, GeoSynths, Guitar Effects on Synths. So that was doing all right, but the only problem was it meant I had to keep buying pedals. So that kind of tailored off a little bit, and I was doing a day job, pretty much like a lot of us do, and then this was a kind of hobby. And then I got laid off with my job. And just prior to that, I'd bought a Dave Smith OB6, and I was doing some patches on it and showing it to people, and they could have a listen. And they said, "Oh, you should do a bank of patches." So I did. And, it was doing all right. I was selling a few. I mean, I sold it at a very sort of low price and didn't really do any marketing or any of that type of stuff. It was just messing about. But then, as I said, I got made redundant or laid off, and it was definitely a clear picture of I either carry on freelancing what I was doing in terms of my normal work, which was video production, or go over and go the whole hog with the sound design. So it was the latter that I chose, and still here doing it.
Nice. So the Dave Smith was that the Revolution pack that was the first one?
It was actually, yeah. No, it was Evolution.
Evolution.
Yes, yeah. You can see I'm not very creative with the names.
Oh, okay.
Evolution, Revolution, and all that kind of. Revolution was for the Rev 2, so. But yeah, I started. It was Evolution Volume 1 for the OB6. Yeah.
So that started it off. Did you start off selling on your website here?
No, I didn't actually. I just did. At first, it was like I did a video and just had a link, and it was like, you send me a bit of money for it and I'll send you the file. And then later on I had to just figure out, okay, this is how I've got to do it properly. So set up a website, set up a processing system, so all the files are automatically sent and all that type of thing. So a bit of a learning curve, tried a few different sort of systems behind it all, but yeah, it was just that's you have to make it up as you go along, really. There's nothing really else you can sort of follow.
That's true, yeah.
So yeah, that's how it started with just the OB6, and then I mean, I'd had like a load of gear anyway. I had things like the Voyager and all that type of thing. And when I got made redundant, it was I got a severance package, as you guys call it in the US, and I decided to sell off all my synths that were, I didn't really use, things like workstations and like the Voyager and some other kind of vintage things that I had. Sell that off, use my severance, and just buy the latest gear to make sounds, or latest polysynths, because I only make sounds for polysynths. And that was the idea, and just try and just flood it for a good old 12 months or so, making sounds one after another. to try and get volume out there rather than specific sort of synths. And then sold my house and moved and set up an office. What was it? It was about 2018, something like that, up here, and now just recently set up at home. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you had a nice little office there, but it was kind of a weird shaped room, and
it was like a Toblerone. Do you know Toblerone, the Swedish food? It's like a chocolate, but it's kind of, if you look at it sort of front on, if you like, or the length of it, it's like a triangle, and that was the shape of the room. It was my synthesizer Bermuda triangle. And the only thing that went missing was the money in my pocket.
The money and the time.
That's right. Yeah. So it was a funny shape, but I didn't have anywhere to live. I was sort of like stopping at a relative's house in a small little room. So because I had to move from the Midlands in the UK to the north, and so I got this place, rented it, and did it out a little bit, and it served me well for a good couple of years. But then I moved out just a couple of months ago, actually. Yeah, and it is.
Do you prefer having an office to go to, or are you totally cool with just working from home?
Because that's what I'd done before. But at the same time, I'd always sort of gone around, the country. That was part of the job that I used to do. Was, I'd go and see a client, to organise what we're going to do for a video shoot, and then a few weeks later go and do the shoot. So there was an element of not always being in the office.
Okay.
But of course, one of the hardest things, working at home is your own schedule. I suppose if you're working for a company and you're constantly online with somebody, then, you can have set hours. But when you are working for yourself, it is a little bit challenging to, stick the cap on at 9 o'clock in the morning and work your good solid 8 hours. So,
and stick to that consistently. Yeah.
You don't get rained on when you work at home. That's one thing.
Well, and you save so much time. There's no commute, right? You don't have to necessarily get up and get dressed. You could do it in your PJs if you want.
Exactly.
I
do. Yeah.
So
that's not a nice sight to think of. Please don't.
Well, but you save. You think about how much time you. Like just for me, when I used to go into an office and the time I'd have to get up, get ready, drive like 30 minutes, 45 minutes just to get there. So all that time you save, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's totally wasted. And, I used to drive to Birmingham in the UK from, and it was I only lived, 30 miles out, but you could guarantee it'd be an hour and a half to get into the office. So, and then you've got all the same thing trying to come out, and that was Monday to Friday. But the good thing was, like I said, I used to travel the whole of the UK, Scotland and Wales and everywhere, so it wasn't too bad really for doing that.
Well, that's good. Well, let's I did have a question about your musical background. So some folks may not be aware, but Jamie actually has a SoundCloud page. It's soundcloud.com/magikroom, magic, MAGIKROOM, and you guys should definitely check this out. I'm going to play a little bit of this tune here called Summer Wave. This is like one of my favorites of yours that I've found on your SoundCloud page. I'll play a little bit of that, and then if you could just talk about your musical background, how you got into this, and
sure.
And we'll take care of that. So here is Summer Wave. like that. So yeah, check out soundcloud.com/magicroom to get some more Jamie's musical talents on display here. So yeah, it seems like there's some pretty heavy house influences in some of your music here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of grew up with music. All my parents and brothers play instruments, and as a kid, I'd be walking around in the living room, and there'd be cables everywhere, and guitars and effects and all that type of thing. But it was that traditional guitar, and I mean, there'd be drum kits there and everything. But I really, at that kind of age, I mean, I was born in '71, so. Around sort of late '70s, we were getting into things like Star Wars. There was Gary Newman coming out, and of course, a lot of science fiction used synthesizers. And I didn't know what a synth was, but I just knew I loved these strange sounds. It was the future. And of course, then in the sort of early '80s, I mean, a lot of people into synthesizers will think of like Depeche Mode and all that type of era. But for me, the early '80s to probably mid '80s and everything was all the sort of electro music and the whole sort of breakdancing culture.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, I mean, look at the size of it. I did used to actually do breakdancing when I was a kid. I was in a crew.
Imagine Jamie spinning on his head.
Yeah, I did most of the popping stuff, but I did a bit of breaking. But yeah, I was a skinny rake then, if you can believe it. And but of course, the whole sort of electro scene, it was like hip hop as well, but there was a lot of electronics going in it, and
drum machines and stuff were big for that kind of stuff.
And there was, of course, with electro, there's an element of like things that were a bit funky as well, and also, funk was a huge part of it as well. The things like Africa Bambaataa, all that was the early sort of side. And then you had all the breakdancing culture. I think it was because it was a scene rather than just a style of music. It was, the whole sort of graffiti thing with it all, artwork. And so I fell in love with that. So I wasn't really one to follow things like Human League and Depeche Mode. I mean, Gary Newman was probably different because he had this robotic thing about him, and I loved anything like that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was really the electro. Then from '87, that's when really house music kind of took off here in the UK, and I just fell in love with it. I was myself and two of my friends. We got a pair of decks each, and we were doing all scratching and mixing and all that type of thing. So I got into it through the whole sort of dancing scene, and then into DJing, and then house came out, and that was it for me.
That had you hooked, huh?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, that whole Chicago house, and then not so much acid, because I don't know. I was more of a kind of like Todd Terry and Marshall Jefferson and all these types of guys, Kevin Saunderson and all that type of thing. So that was what got me hooked, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to make that music. So yeah.
So starting out, so I'm kind of interested in, because I'm probably about 10 to 20 years behind from where you started, and it was a whole different world, obviously. Like, I had at least the beginnings of an internet to try and educate myself, and forums and things like that. But for you starting out, how did you find out about what tools you needed to be able to produce that?
It's very difficult. I was DJing, and I used to get this magazine, DJ Mag or something like that. And I must have been I was probably about 17 years old, and there was an ad for a recording studio course, and it was by a studio over in Birmingham. So there I am. I mean, at 17, I was working full time in an engineering factory, drilling holes in bits of metal, and I was also did a part-time job as well, but that was only because I was going out with the boss's daughter, and I got paid more for the amount of shifts I did.
Nice.
But anyway, so I used to go over to I went over to this studio, and I just fell in love as soon as I went in there. You know what it's like when you got a room full of gear. There's a certain smell. isn't there?
Oh
You
yeah.
know, or if you go to a music store and you go into the sort of high tech department, there's a smell, and it's that kind of a bit of chemical. It's the new car smell to a degree, and everything sounded weird because it was all soundproof. And but I just fell in love with it. There was all this gear around, and I had no clue how to use any of it. All I'd brought with me is some records, and I'd read one book about sampling that I got from the library. But there was, as you said, there was no internet there.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone personally who was doing music or electronic music, so you just had to find it out yourself, really.
Yeah, the library. That's something I haven't heard about in a while.
Yes, yes, those whole old things covered in dust.
Those things with those weird things called books. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny how quick things have sort of changed so quickly. But yeah, that was how it all kind of started for me. So I did 2 tracks in the studio, and I had to pay. I mean, it was £12 an hour back then, in the late '80s. So someone can work that out. And I'd probably spent about 30 hours on each one.
Oh wow! So
So I did
60
2
hours.
house tracks, and all of it really was sampling bits off records. I did a beat using 909s and 808 samples that he had. It was a S900 sampler, which was, I think the S950 had just come out or something at the time, or the S1000, one of them. They had an MC202 and a Moog Prodigy. So I knew 3 chords, and they were the same chord. I just transposed them down and did these 3 tracks, and it was good fun. And I knew that was then what I wanted to do, really, was do that even more. And then it was like a bit of a kind of slow process. So that's pretty much how it all sort of started.
Now, so when you got into this, it was for the electronic stuff. But did you develop any other skills to play any other instruments or anything like that?
Well, only sort of growing up, really. There were, like I say, there was instruments all over the place. I mean, after doing those sort of 2 tracks, I then relocated, and then I sold my decks and I bought my first synthesizer, which was a DX7 Mark II. And I had it for 2 weeks and took it back, and because I couldn't figure out how to work it, I couldn't make anything on it.
The DX7 is my nemesis.
It was impossible to go through. But of course, back then you take it back, you got a credit note, you didn't get your money back. So it was £799, I think I paid for it, and it took me 6 months to earn that money. Working full time and extra shifts and all this type of thing. Because at the time I'd moved to a sort of seaside resort, and I became a croupier working in casinos. So,
cool.
all these weird things that I'd sort of engineering, and then into like bloody spinning a ball around a wheel and playing blackjack. And so then, as I say, I sold decks and I got the DX7, took it back, and then I'd put in the window a Casio RZ1 drum machine for that to be sold, so then I could get a Roland D10, which is naff when you think about it now, but it was one of the only ones that would do multi-timbral. It was 8-part multi-timbral, so...
Okay.
So that was the kind of first one that I'd actually sort of bought, but in terms of learning other instruments, there was a period where I ended up, some years after that, where I worked in a commercial studio as an engineer, and there was drum kits there, so I used to always mess around with them. So yeah, other than that though, it's always been synths. I don't even think of myself as a keys player anyway. It's all about sound really for me.
Well, speaking of being a keys player, let me just play a little bit of this video here. And we'll let the comment section decide on whether or not Jamie's got some chops here. Check this out. Yeah, I think you're pretty good there, Jamie.
Oh, no, I just cheat with that. It's really me just doing fiddly things with my hand, and I really use an arpeggiator underneath.
Right. Secretly, it was pre-recorded.
And no. It's I learned. You see, it's weird because when I first got into it, I bought this synth. I'd done these 2 house tracks in the studio, and the idea was then is to start to build house tracks, demo them up, and then go into a studio and all that type of thing. But I found myself doing different types of music because, excuse me, I'd always loved like Vangelis and sort of music scores. So I ended up doing music like that, which was very strange. And I kind of started to learn some of the chords. Even to this day, I've no idea what chords I'm playing, but I learned the shapes and how to get that sound from listening to them, and then playing scales and so on. But yeah, I can do all right with a keyboard, but nothing amazing. But.
You were shredding in that video. That's pretty awesome. So I'm just curious. Back in the day, when you started acquiring some synths and you started, punching out some house music or whatnot, what was the recording like? Were you going into tape or?
Oh god, yeah. Everything was. Everything was my first. Well, you see, after I'd moved, and I was working in the casino and everything, and I sold my decks, and I had this synth, and then I got like an Atari ST and all that type of thing. I met up with a girl who was a singer, so we ended up just writing together to do music, and that was a change of music. There was a little bit of house, but a lot of it was very much kind of down tempo. And you can kind of think of around that time, Lisa Stansfield, massive, elements of Massive Attack for the sort of downbeat things. So and soul elements as well. So we ended up, just writing songs. And the first part I used in terms of recording. Great, yeah, you use Atari ST, but if you want to do vocals back then, you had to have a tape. So I had it was like a little 4-track cassette Porter Studio, and you had to sync it up with FSK, put a code on one channel and one thing, and you'd be left with 3. So it's really crude when you think about it now. But then later, when I started to do some recording, and I started working in this recording studio, it was all 16-track reel-to-reel, and you'd use SIMP-T and Stripe. Channel 16 was SIMP-T and connect it to the Atari, and it was like voodoo back in those days. It's like, what, you push play on the tape and it starts the computer, and
and everything's synchronized and somehow kept in time. Yeah,
it was magic. I mean, a lot of the things, I guess now we take for granted, when it comes to things like singing and all that type of stuff, where you do one chorus and you can just copy it across. Well, you couldn't back then. You had to, unless you had a sampler with long sampling time, you couldn't do that. So you had to record, if there was 4 or 5 choruses in a tune, they'd all have to be recorded, as well as the harmonies and all that type of thing. So, but it was good. It was, enjoyed it. I mean, as I say, it was a commercial studio, so I did some of the engineering as well. So it was recording other bands and different types of music. So it was a good exposure for learning new techniques, and always finding the guitarist one.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I kind of cut out there right when you were talking about the guitarist.
Well, it's probably just as well.
Okay. Out of all there's many different types of synthesis. There's subtractive, there's additive, there's FM, there's wavetable. Do you have a preference on a type of synthesis that you prefer when designing sounds?
Well, obviously, subtractive is the most common, whether it's in some, an analog synth or a modeled synth or plug-in. subtractive's the most common one to use. Even if it uses wavetables, there's still going to be subtractive elements if it's got a filter there as well. So that's probably the most common. And you know what it's like. Once you know one synth, you know them all. It's a bit like, we all know how to drive, but yes, we get a new car. There's a few new buttons and things are laid out a little bit differently that you have to learn. But still, we still know the skill of driving. And that's pretty much how my approach to synths are. And so subtractive, wavetable, I have my own ways of doing things. We all do. So the only one I probably don't really use much is additive. I don't think I've had much, especially in the way of hardware, that uses it. I can only think of there was the Kiowa K5000 or something like that, K5000S. I can't really think of much in hardware that used additive.
Yeah, I don't know that I've run across too many synths that have additive synthesis. I have a few soft synths that can do it, but I can't say I really understand it. FM is a little bit more complicated as well, but ultimately you're just putting sine waves into sine waves into sine waves kind of thing. And once you kind of understand that, there's actually there's a program called Citrus, which is from the FL Studio guys, which it lays it out with like a matrix, which is, I think, the best interface for FM, because it gives you a nice visual feedback on what you're routing into what. And that kind of helped click with FM for me, because trying to do something on like a DX7 is a little tedious. It'd be like driving a car with your hands and your feet on the steering wheel. It's so
that's an image,
right?
Yeah. No, I think FM is, I don't know, it's weird. Sometimes you see people commenting like it's some kind of superpower. I know FM, and it's like, what? And the best I found FM actually was when Roland for the System 8 dropped the FM update. So you could use these FM algorithms, essentially like oscillators, but then use subtractive synthesis on it. So that's probably the best way, because the only thing is making sounds for me is a creative endeavor. If there's too much logical element to it, then I am out of the creative part, and then you end up making a sound for because it uses this, when really you try to make the sound as good as you can. You know what I mean?
And where FM is
using things for the sake of using it.
Right, and FM's pretty mathematical. It's about the ratios and things like that.
It is. Yeah,
but
it's not a creative thing, is it?
No, it's
the results can be, but the process isn't. Yeah.
But the way you get to where you want to be is very mathematical, or can be. But let's check this out. This is a very cool patch that you made on the System 8, actually using the FM engine. Check this out, guys. This is really interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that. So that was kind of your old man groaning.
Yeah, old man, and it was. I just pictured. I was when I made that sound, I was laughing my head off for ages. It just made me think of an old man wearing his dressing gown. He's been smoking like 100 cigarettes, and he's got his bottle of whiskey in his hand in a brown bag, and he's coughing it all up. So that was the picture I had in my mind.
That's definitely one of the most unique sounds I've ever heard.
I'd love someone to use that sound in something. I really would. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to give it a shot.
Yes, definitely.
Let me just play just a little bit more of that FM patch set here, so that we can get an idea of some other sounds that you made with the System 8 here. So I just kind of backed it up to like another spot here. Let's see where we at. What we have. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And the System 8's one of those synths that Roland's continued to kind of put updates out, and that FM was an add-on because when that synth shipped, it didn't come with that, from what I understand.
No, it didn't. I bought the System 8 second hand, and it was before the FM update and the JX3P. And I thought, oh, it's a good synth. I'd done 64 patches for the System 8 engine. I'd done 64 for the Jupiter 8 engine. And then I was working on the Juno engine. And then they dropped the FM update. And I thought, oh, no, I'm going to have to go back and redo my other ones. But I thought, no, I'll do another 64 of just FM sounds.
Nice, yeah.
So I did that. And I finished up and then released it. And then they dropped the JX3P. So then it was like, oh, right. So I ended up making the 64 patch of that and then including them for free for people who'd already bought them anyway, and include it in the bank. So, but of course it works with the plugins as well that they have. So the System 8 plugin in Roland Cloud, patches all work in that. So, but yeah, I loved how they did it with the FM. That really should be. They could have easily have done that as a product.
Just by itself.
Because it had two levels of one level of basic algorithms and then a level of more complex ones, and then you could just combine them in the different oscillators, and then if it's too bright, use the filters, the different types of filters. So
made it kind of a lot easier to get some good results out of FM for sure. I'd agree with that. Now the Roland Cloud is that I've been a cloud user pretty much since they launched that service. So the only reason why I don't own a System 8 right now is because of the Roland Cloud, because they've got the System 8 engine in there, and it's pretty good. It's
identical. They are. They're exactly the same, and I suppose they see it as a win-win, really. And it's the whole subscription model. Some people don't like the idea of it anyway, and I can understand that, especially if you're subscribing to one and then another, and it all sort of adds up, I guess. But at the same time, maybe at first it may have seemed not worth it, but now, it is, with all the things they've got on there.
Oh yeah, they've added all kinds of stuff to it. I mean,
loads of stuff.
They even I think one of the most recent add-ons they did is the XV5080, which is a fantastic Roland module, and it almost seems like I hope that they don't transition out of hardware entirely and become a software services type thing altogether. I'd love to see more Roland hardware in the future.
I think so. I mean, they've got the Jupiter X and the XM. They're the ones with the models on, and then they've got the other Phantom and the whatever, which is the Zencore, which essentially it samples with some kind of behavior modeling, very much like what Supernatural was. So they're in their lane, I guess. Be sad if we don't see any more ACB again, because that's a wicked system.
I think it was super CPU heavy to reproduce. I think that's part of the reason why the System 8's only 8 voices.
That's right.
But still, even if they went all out and they did an ACB synth, maybe it costs a little more money or whatever, but they put enough juice in it to get like a full 16 voices or...
Well, that's what I was hoping for, actually, because then I could work on doubled layers, because even though they've got a performance mode in there where you can mix and match different engines, you only get down to 4 notes polyphony.
Right.
Stacked sound, so, which isn't great. It seemed like a no-brainer that they were going to come out with that. I mean, they've already made the technology. It's just a case of creating more room and slapping another board in.
Yeah, it seems like they've kind of gone the other, like they've kind of scaled it back.
It's obviously a financial thing, isn't it?
I mean, it's probably a lot cheaper and a lot easier for them to do what they're doing now, I'd imagine, but it's disappointing because they were onto something cool. I thought the plug-out idea was one of the coolest innovations in the industry for a while, because you basically can take your synth and it can turn into several different synths if you want, with that vintage Roland flavor that a lot of people like. So I don't know.
Without taking out the originals.
Yeah. And I thought that was a very innovative thing that they were doing there, and I wish they I would have expanded more on that, but
Never mind.
yeah, never mind.
You can spend like, wait another couple of years when the Jupiter X is like $500 or something like
Right.
that. I bet some people are going, "What's he talking about?"
So,
protective and so on. Some people get about it.
yeah, and it's kind of weird. Like I understand the service model, and a lot of companies are pushing that these days. But for a lot of us, we've grown up with the idea that you buy a product and it's yours, not you give them money indefinitely and you never really own anything. So
you're paying for the license to use it,
right,
you don't own it with any sort of software, and it's a strange thing because then you've just got to keep versions of the software so it's compatible with the OS that you're using on your computer, or it's all right for like a few years, 5 years, 6 years ahead, but what about in 10 years time?
Eventually
what you pay for isn't going to be.
Yep.
And the thing that does my head in about software is the fact that you end up rebuying it every single year with new versions that they come out, a certain number 7 or number 8, and they might add one new software or two that you're not particularly interested in, but you feel like you have to buy them to be current.
And that can kind of go into the whole production side too with the plugins.
Yeah.
There's effects plugins. There's like the Wave Suite. There's Isotopes.
Yeah, and they've got the subscription element to it all as well.
Yeah, some of them do, but even the ones that don't, where you're constantly like, they just came out with this new version of this thing, and I need to buy it, and it's $300-400, and
that's right.
all of a sudden every year you're spending like a couple of grand on upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like people go, "Oh, you got so many synths and everything," but then I think, well, have a look at your software and how many software synths have you got?
Right.
You've got these software synths. You may or may not have paid for them, but you've got all that. I've got this hardware, but at least it's physical. It's still worth something. It's still tangible.
And in 10 years, you can still plug it in and use it.
There it is, yeah.
Presumably, as long as it doesn't break.
Oh, as long as it doesn't burn and yeah.
And it's yours. So I mean, and having a physical interface to interact with, I think, is the best way.
Yeah, definitely. No, totally agree. It's when I bought the Moog One, of course, it's been quite sort of contentious, really, with people. It's like, oh, what you could get this for it, and you can get that for it, and they're right. You could get multiple synths for the price of it, but what you can't get is it's all right when you make 1 or 2 sounds, but when you sit and make like 100+ sounds, it needs to make sense the way that it works. And for me, it's more the experience of using a Moog One rather than just the sound. And then when I go back to something, and it's got a like piddly little screen,
right? And mouse,
it's a nightmare.
Or even just mouse and keyboard on a computer is not. God, yeah. You're just not. You're not getting the same experience, and
you're not. No.
And I understand, like, as when I started out, I started in 2001, and I started using a tracker program called DreamStation, and it was a 3 oscillator, synth based on DirectX, and a tracker that could do, I think, 24 tracks, and you would build tracks using that thing. You can load in some PCM samples into the oscillator, so you could do kicks and snares and stuff that were external, processed somewhere else and brought in. But that's kind of how I got in. So I mean, and then I went from there into Reason. So I mean, I was kind of in the whole software side from the beginning because it was most accessible as somebody who was not making a lot of money at the time. And
definitely. I mean, the entry point to get into doing music, it's zero now, isn't it? I mean, I had to spend 6 months and earn £700-800 to buy a synthesizer, and I just had one synth. That was it. There was nothing else, no recording, so there was no other way. But if software had been around then, plugins, God, I certainly would have
jumped.
I'm not anti-plugin.
No,
I'm not against them at all. I think some of them sound great. The work that we did together with Diva. But also, Spectrasonics, and there's quite a number of them that do sound really, really good. The software isn't at fault. The interface is the thing. And so once they crack that, it makes sense.
And you've got companies like Spectrasonics that are kind of doing they're making the profiles that match hardware synths. And I've tried that out on a few synths that I have. Like I did a thing where playing the Little Fatty, using the Little Fatty presets and controlling Omnisphere. You forget that you're not playing a soft synth through your hardware synth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
And it gives it a whole different feel, which is pretty cool. Although, there's the people that say, well, that's like, a $1,200 controller then. Yeah, but I mean, I had it anyway, and I have Omnisphere. May as well try it out. So
exactly, it's probably the best route so far that someone's done. That because mapping controllers is terrible. It's a nightmare. And then say you don't use it for a while, you forget what was mapped.
Right, and you have to set it up
just using your mouse.
It's setting things up for different sessions, and I think MIDI 2.0 is going to fix some of that, but it's going to take a while for more devices to come onto market and to take advantage, I think, of the two-way communication between your DAW and the plugin or whatever and the controller. That might end up being something very cool in the future. We'll have to see how that works out. How many people actually leverage that?
You're right. I mean, if there are things like even the little, like you see on mixers where the little scribble strips above the knob or something like that. If they had that for controllers, and it was, I know Novation did a little bit try to use their mapper. But it had to copy the
automap.
Every single automap had to copy, but you'd still end up. Well, I used to still end up using a mouse, and it's just more convenient that I find. Plus, as well, something came up the other day about people saying, this impression that if you've got hardware synths that you don't make music with it, where all you do is just sit and look at the pretty lights. But people forget that using hardware is how it all started. We're not people who use hardware. They're not doing anything wrong. It's just how it's always been.
In terms of hardware, we're hardware fans. Do you find yourself going into shops to just kind of look and see what they have, or are you an online kind of shopper type person, or when you're kind of looking into purchasing something or looking to kind of see what's out there, what's your kind of go-to for that type of thing?
Well, I guess it's like everyone else, really. It's like you'll hear the buzz of a new synth coming out. Maybe you'll watch a few demos, and then you just wait for it to be in the stores and online. You try and not go into places, certain forums where they'll slag things off. But you did find yourself you go there anyway. And then I tend to buy all my gear from a store that's not too far from me. It's Music Matter in Preston, and they do some really good deals for me. In fact, I'm doing a deal with them. If someone buys a Moog one, they get my patches for free. So, but there's no other sort of financial deal with them or anything. It's just a case of they're a good bunch of blokes. You go in the showroom, it's just synths and drum pads, the drum things. There's no guitars or anything like that. So
nice.
No crazy solos going on in the background.
No Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, no Stairway to Heaven. The only thing you have to contend with is jump
or Axel F.
Yeah. But no, it's just like, it's very quiet actually in there. But no, I tend to get all my gear from there.
Cool. And it's kind of a synth specific type.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and they do some really good deals online as well. So, but yeah, that's what I tend to do. But of course, they don't always get everything. Some synths you just have to order. Online things like what have I got of late? Yeah, of late they've pretty much had everything that I need, but all in the past before I started using them, it was things like Thoman or Toman, however you pronounce them, in Europe, and maybe some online store you get them from, and same as everyone else now.
Yeah, here and where I was in Colorado, there's not really synth-only type shops, not at least that I've ever seen. And so we have kind of like general music stores. The big one is the Guitar Center. And when I first started getting into synths in the early 2000s, I would go in there and they'd have like Nordleads, and they'd have Volvers, and they'd have some pretty high-end synths in there. You go in there now and they don't have any of that. So any of these synths that you see behind me, really, you walk into a Guitar Center, maybe if it's like a big one, maybe they'll have some things, but for the most part, like, it seems like over the last 10 years or so, like, they've really cut back on having kind of flagship instruments on the synth side available to try out. So like, I've had to really rely a lot on YouTube and demos and things like that to help me decide whether or not it's something that I want to buy, or going to I've been going to KnobCon for the last couple of years, which is a synth event that's put on by Suit and Tie Guy of STG Labs, and that's a nice way to kind of get some hands-on time with some cutting edge gear as well. But that's a trip to Chicago. That's something not everyone can do. And I just thank goodness for the internet, because otherwise you'd be taking a real shot in the dark on what you're getting.
No, it is like that, and you have to do that to a degree. I'm the OB6. I was up seeing a client at the time anyway in Glasgow, and there was a store up there, Guitar, and I just looked the sort of night before while I was stopping up there, and I saw, they've got one. So after I saw the client, I went over there and ended up buying one. So that was okay, but I wouldn't have been able to test one out where I lived locally, because nowhere had Dave Smith stuff. You hardly saw Moog stuff anywhere. It was just the usual Japanese kind of, middle of the road types box shifters.
Yeah,
really. They were the sort of synths you could find. So you had to just order online and hope that it was all right. Really, because I hate sending stuff back. I really do.
Yeah,
I can't stand doing it. I don't buy things to try out to then just send back. If I'm buying it, for the companies. It's not right for the companies. It's costing them as well. So I'll do my research and I'll listen and I'll think, yes, that sounds good. I can work with that, and I buy it online, and that's it. Just get on with it.
Aside from the DX7, were there any other synths that you got and were like, I kind of don't like this, and needed to send it back?
I couldn't send it back as such. I did buy something about 5 years ago, and it was because of the hype. And you're not going to like it, actually, because you've got one behind you.
Okay.
And that was the Alesis Andromeda.
Yes.
I bought it because of the hype. It was like, this is supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread and everything. And I really didn't get on with it at all. I didn't like the sound of it, and I bought it because I kept getting asked, "What are you going to do for the Andromeda?" And I thought, you know what? Why not? So I can't remember how much I paid, but I think it was close to, it was about £2,500, maybe £3,000. I don't know, something like that. And I bought a new screen for it because the screen was going, and I just really couldn't get on with the sound of it. There was just something two-dimensional for it. I can't put my finger on it. So and I was kind of like, come on, Jamie, you should be liking this. This is a but no. So sorry, Marshall. But
it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Was the one that I thought, no, and I couldn't wait to sell it. So I did.
See, I had a situation where I bought an MS-2000. That was the first synth I ever bought, and like you, I couldn't, for some reason, I just kind of couldn't get along with it very well. So I took it back to the store the next day, and exchange it for an SH-201 instead. Which, in retrospect, is not a good trade, I don't think.
The red one, wasn't it? The red one?
Yeah, it was like all plastic and red and black, and it was...
The plastic knobs to make them look like they were metal.
Right. Yeah. But that was in 2006, and that synth was brand new. Yes. And I had watched a lot of demos online and things like that, and I thought I'd probably like that better. And, then I realized, that MS-2000, part of it was like when I started, I didn't understand synthesis at all. So I was learning as well. I mean, I had taught myself some stuff through the Synths and Reason and that DreamStation program, but I didn't really know what I was doing. You know what I mean? So once I got into the hardware side, I started kind of figuring out a lot more like, oh, okay, this is how the signal flow works, and this is, those types of things. But
well, you've certainly made up for it these days, though.
Yeah, yes. So
your Tower of Moog behind you.
Yeah, the Moog Tower. I still need to get a Voyager, and I think I'm good with Moog stuff for a while. But I like them a lot. First of all, because they're an American company, and I like being able to support the American synth manufacturers. Because I think Dave Smith is one as well, but I don't own any Dave Smith stuff. But got some Moog stuff, and they just have such a rich history and a great sound, I think. And
you're right.
The Moog 1, is one of those synths that a couple years, like maybe a year before it came out, I remember talking to my rep. I buy most of my gear from Sweetwater. If it's not used, I pretty much buy it from them. So yeah, the Moog 1 is one of those synths that I had wanted for forever. And it had its bumps, like, to get going and stuff, but I think the firmware updates they've done consistently here have really improved the instrument to where now I feel really comfortable sitting down with it and being able to create what I expect to get out of it, if that makes sense.
No. I mean, that's one good thing. I mean, we take it for granted now, the fact that, okay, it doesn't do a certain thing now, and we'll wait for a firmware update. When I started, once you bought that synth, you bought it. That was it. There was no firmware updates. There was nothing. My D10, D50s, all that type of thing. Once you bought it, you bought it. So yeah, the Moog 1 and everything is it's definitely, it's matured. There's still some things that need addressing, but I think they're firmly committed to the Moog 1, definitely.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of that, so you were talking about the patches that you had created. I'm going to play a little bit from your Singularity Volume 1. And then also, since there was kind of I guess Moog had reached out to you and you had done some patches for them for hire that they have put and are giving out to owners of the Moog 1. And I'll play a little bit because I've got Lisa Belladonna who demoed those on one of the Moog YouTube videos. We'll play a little bit of that. So let me just switch over to that and we'll listen to some of this. This is good stuff. I love that. That's good stuff, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's It's definitely a great synth.
And then we'll check out a little bit of this. This is on the Moog Music YouTube channel. It was for the 1.1.0 firmware update with Amos. And I guess it's about almost a little more than halfway through. Lisa demos these new patches that Jamie made. So let's listen to a little bit of this. And that's all I'll play of that. But yeah, check that out, guys. It's incredible and excellent work there, Jamie. So Moog had reached out to you, and was that after they saw your Singularity pack come out, or?
Yeah, it was. I'd released Singularity, which was 128 patches, but of course, each one can be made up of 3 sounds, so there's layers, splits, and all that type of thing. But I released it, and then I got a message from them to say if I'd be interested in working with them. So I did a Skype with them, and then they gave me a brief, and it was like to create. They wanted some kind of classic sound, so it was recreating some of the things like Depeche Mode and Vince Clarke and all that type of thing, but also synths of a certain era, like overhigh and types of sound, polysynths and all that kind of thing. So they gave me it's like a spreadsheet sheet. Sorry, I better say that again. So they gave me a spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet?
Oh, God.
That's awesome.
Yes, compose. I'm going to be thinking about that all the time. So yeah, dealing with Moog, they sent me a link with a spreadsheet of all the kind of tracks they were kind of thinking. There was probably about 20, and then suggestions of the sounds to use. So there were things like, like I say about the Vince Clarke stuff and Stranger Things. They wanted this, that, and that, and so that's what I did. It took a lot of listening to the original records again. Original songs to try and get them as close as possible, which takes time to do. Difficult in that you've got to get them close to the original, but easy because a lot of vintage sounds aren't very complex at all.
Yeah.
They're very simple of what's going on. They didn't have like 5 LFOs and 5 envelopes and all this type of thing. You know what I mean? So they're really kind of simple, but the thing is you've got to be accurate about it. So yeah, I did 50, I think it was 51 actually. One was a terrible drum thing that I did on it, but essentially 50 patches for it, and that was free to users. So it was a good experience to do that. And then, of course, having Lisa Belladonna demonstrate, I mean, she's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
I've never known any, she's the first person I've ever seen do solos on an arpeggiated sound.
Right.
She's got that. I don't know how she does it. I don't know. But
I don't know either.
That was great.
She's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
that had to have been a treat. Did you watch the performance live, or did you just watch it later?
Oh, I did. Yeah, no, I watched it, and I was grinning from ear to ear.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I mean, Moog don't really sort of highlight their sound designers, but people knew it was me. I mean, in fact, when people heard them, that's Jamie that's done that, because certain telltales I do in my sound. So
it's kind of like an artist in music will have a certain style, you kind of have
Yeah.
a style in sound design.
I think I do. Yeah, I think I do. I think I'm probably known, well, in the small circles that we sort of revolve in for things like pads and motion sounds, and that's really my type of thing. I could just sit and make them all day, every day. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on that Only Pads pack there, Jamie.
Only pads back. Well, I am working on volume 2 now for the Moog one, so
Nice.
that's the next one. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic machine. It was a great opportunity, and I've really enjoyed sort of doing that. And hopefully, I'll do some more with Moog. Who knows?
Oh, that'd be great. I hope you do.
Mm.
So I guess we're coming up on an hour. Let me I just want to let everyone know that Jamie does have a Patreon. If you guys are subscribed to him on YouTube, maybe you guys are interested in getting some more from Jamie and through his Patreon, and given the times these days, probably wouldn't hurt. So just want
No, it certainly would. Yeah, definitely. Well, it helps me do the Sunday shows and that kind of thing. Because I won't lie, we've all been impacted. Everyone who's involved in sort of music and making sounds, or everyone, impacted by sort of current world events. So yeah, if you like what I do and you like watching it, then by all means, it'd certainly help if you support. Definitely.
So, and you can go to just patreon.com/geosynths. You can find the link on his main website under bio as well. If you go into here, there's a link to the Patreon right here. But yeah, so that'd be awesome if you guys are able to. So Jamie, I guess we could kind of wrap it up. I just want to ask if you could give any tips to somebody who's starting out into synthesis or wanting to release patches and things like that. When you sit down and you start making patches, could you give any kind of tips or pointers that might help somebody who's just starting out with something like that?
Well, I guess it depends because some people sell patches, but they've got like a job as well, and they'll do it just as a sort of hobby, if you like. I do it full time, and what comes with that is being able to run a business. So making the sounds is the easy bit, but it's running a business and making sure that everything's all correct and that's the tricky part. But I do videos. I've been doing live streams for the past 2-3 weeks of making sounds, so it shows my kind of process, how I approach it. But I think really number one tip really is just make the sounds that you really that you like. My approach is I don't make sounds to sell them. I make sounds that I want to hear, and then I sell them. So it's a kind of slightly different approach that you might think. And sometimes, it works. Sometimes it doesn't. You might buy a synth and do a collection for them. You think, oh, right, this will do really well. And you sell 4. So, you know what I mean? It's it's not like, it sounds like a dream thing, but in reality, it's like anything to do with sales or selling a product. You've just got to know how to run a business.
Excellent. That's good advice, and it's something that I think, if you're serious about trying to create sounds for commercial use, there's a whole business side that isn't as much fun as sitting down and programming on your synth, but is 100% necessary for sure.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for sitting down with me here today. I hope you stay safe over there. And
yes.
Guys, check out the Synth Show. It's every Sunday at it's 1 o'clock Eastern. What time is it where you're at when that starts?
It's 6 p.m. UK, and during the week I'm doing Tuesday and Thursdays at 3 p.m. UK. So I suppose it's minus 5 hours for you.
Yeah, over here on the East Coast.
Yeah. So check them out. But they're all recorded, so you can. I think people like going just to have a chat with me, really, or discuss something. Or discuss amongst themselves. It's just a way of people getting together in the synth world in real time, I suppose. So yeah, I make a. It seems like originally I was doing them so people could learn how to do sound design, but in reality, that I think that's just like a sideshow.
Yeah.
People just want to have a bit of a gas with each other.
Well, and even having the ability to be able to interact in real time while you're doing things like that, people can ask questions about certain equipment or synths or techniques, and I enjoy watching your patching videos because I still learn stuff even though I've been doing stuff a long time. There's still tricks and things that you can pick up from other people as well.
Oh God, yeah, without a doubt, yeah. I mean, you never stop learning. No,
exactly. So, and you guys can check out Jamie's channel. It's just GeoSynths on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to that as well. And I think I'm going to play out some of your patches here from the Zenith Volume 2 for the Novation Peak. This is a lovely patch here, Contact Geo. I love this patch. So I'll play us out to that, and you guys all have a great night, great day, great evening, whatever. And Jamie, thanks again for coming by.
No problem. It was a pleasure. I'll say that again. No problem. It was a pleasure.
Excellent.